Right now, I mean, it's such a serious topic, and it's good to meet our next guest. He is representing the Green Hills area in the city of Nashville, in the metro area. He is Representative Bob Freeman, and he joins us in studio to talk about a piece of legislation he has introduced in this General Assembly. Bob, thank you for being on.
Thank you for having me.
Let's just give folks who don't know your background, how long you've served in the General Assembly, where you're from, where'd you grow up, how's mom and them?
Yeah, so grew up in Nashville. I've served now 6 years in the General Assembly. Served on a municipal level in the Homelessness Commission, and that kind of opened my eyes to how you can make an impact on the community around you. Speaker Harwell, who was the person who held the seat before me, ran for governor, so it was an open seat, and people encouraged me to run. I did. It was a Republican seat, so I didn't really think I was going to win. I thought it'd be fun to get out there and do the work, and I won. And now I'm getting ready to start my fourth term.
Was there any at the beginning? Was there any of the dog catches car?
Oh gosh, yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Now the hard work begins.
Yeah, I had a job at the time that where I traveled 4 days a week, and didn't have a conversation with my employer, and had to have a conversation after I won, and it was like, well, what does that mean? I said, well, I'm going to be in Nashville for 4 days a week now. And they said, well, we need to talk about this.
Well, obviously as you get reelected, you must be serving your constituents well. And I appreciate you coming on and having a discussion about, what is obviously a very emotional topic. It's kind of the coming together of a lot of different subjects that you're told not to talk about at polite parties, right? Politics, religious faith, spiritual faith, and death. And just give us a background as to why this was on your heart to bring the legislation. I think you did it last session, right?
I did indeed.
Okay.
Yeah. A couple of things all happened at the same time. My grandmother, passed away. She was in her 90s, and, the last 5 months of her life, all she would say is she's ready to go. She's done. And, she fell and had to go to rehab. And she didn't want to do it. And so the solution that was given to her was to stop eating. So she refused to eat. She refused her medicine. The last 60 days of her life, she was in horrible pain. And the last 30 days, she was in and out of consciousness, moaning, and she deserves better. And she needed to have that dignity in death. And she wasn't going to get better. She wasn't going to get up and walk out of that hospital room. This was it. And the doctors told us as much. I had the exact same, scenario with a close friend of mine whose dad was 96. He had cancer. And the last several months of his life, he was bedridden, couldn't move. Everybody had to take care of him, which they were happy to do, but he didn't want that. He needed that dignity in death as well. And, we give it to our pets. We offer it to other countries, offer it to their loved ones. We have 10 states, as you said earlier, that do this. I think we need to give people the opportunity, at the end of their life to not suffer. And this is one option.
So as you presented this last year and as you present it this year, I'm certain that you've heard some of the concerns. Let's walk through, the concerns that you hear from people and how you feel like you've protected against those concerns. First and foremost, and I kind of went over them, but I want to hear from you that, what are the parameters that we're talking about when we talk about this?
Yeah. So, it has to be, a physician with a second that's going to look at it and review the medical records. It has to be an adult 18 or older. They have to be an adult 18 or older. They have to be terminally ill, and terminally ill is within 6 months of death. They have to, verbally request, to do this and then have written authorization. The doctor has to explain to them the process and again, make sure they understand that this is a terminal decision. The person has to be of sound mind. They have to be able to make these decisions on their own without coercion. And then at any point, up until the execution of this, they can change their mind. The problems that I've heard from people is someone is depressed and they go into the doctor and they decide they want to do this. Those people would not qualify. My father committed suicide 2 months ago. This would not have helped him. He was not terminally ill. So the idea that this is going to allow for this expansion of this is just totally false. These are people that are, as I said a second ago, they're not getting up. They're not getting better. They are terminally ill. And they deserve a safe way out.
I think that some in the audience, and it just occurs to me that they understand what you just said. They're just fearful, and you and I kind of alluded to it right before we came on air. They're fearful that this would be a slippery slope and lead to that. And how do you answer? I mean, because you've defined it, right? I mean, these are terminally ill folks late in life, or at least for the most part, some might have a terminal illness earlier in life. This is not a matter of promoting this as a way to end one's life because you want to end one's life. And I don't think that that's where your heart is on this.
Not at all.
And I don't think that's where the bill is. But how do you speak to those folks who say, I'm concerned about what might come of it?
Sure. I mean, listen, any bill, any cause, any issue, any policy, with enough votes, we could change it tomorrow. So the idea of this slippery slope, I think is kind of a false pretense to not agreeing with the bill. If the body wanted to change the law, we could change the law. I don't think that showing good policy is going to lead to changing it to bad policy. I think that we have an aging generation that's significantly larger and the boomer generation. These people are trying to deal with what terminal illness is for them, and they deserve an opportunity to make decisions for themselves.
Representative Bob Freeman with us talking about his what's the number on the bill? Do you,
it is,
off the top of your head, know? Some folks like to look them up.
House Bill 598.
How has it been received? Have you talked to your fellow legislators about it? I know you guys just got done with the special, obviously, so you're just kind of getting in to the General Assembly. Had any conversations based on last year? Do you believe that there's support?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is support. I think the people that are still cautious don't fully understand what we're trying to do, and they hear medically assisted death and they think something nefarious is going to go on. That whatever can be concocted in one's head. But I think by and large, the General Assembly is 45 to 65 years old. So they all have, aging spouses, aging parents, aging grandparents. And so they've seen this. Many of them have seen this firsthand. They've seen people go through, great pain in the last, months of their life. And, they're looking for a solution. And I think this is one.
Well, I'll give you an example of some of the reaction that we get, because I'm looking to my right at our super text line. There's a lot of reaction, as you might expect. And Sandra writes in and says, let's kill Grandpa because he's eating up the estate. And you mentioned this is a personal decision. This is not a family decision that's being made. It is an individual's choice. And I guess, how would we determine, or is there a process in the bill to determine the aspect of being within sound mind?
I mean, I think that's a decision from a doctor. There are multiple tests that can be given to ensure someone is of sound mind. To that comment just now, if they weren't of sound mind, they also wouldn't be able to make legal decisions. So, they couldn't change a state parameters. There are tests, there are cognitive tests, there are, short cognitive tests. I mean, we all, remember the president talking about his cognitive test. I mean, these are quick, short cognitive tests that try to decide someone's ability.
So someone asked a moment ago, let's see if I can find it, how would it impact, or have you considered what the impact would be on life insurance for the individual?
Yeah, it's a fairly comprehensive piece of legislation, and assuming the life insurance policy is there, they would pay out just as it would if someone were to commit suicide.
So, all right. So we had that question on a couple of fronts, and I think generally the pushback to the legislation involves the concept of sanctity of life, and I fully understand that, and I'm with it, and I just stress that these are individual decisions made by individuals, and what I said yesterday, Bob, was I just don't like the idea of a government being big enough that it can supersede the decision-making process of an individual who, because of the parameters you have just laid out, understands that over the next 6 months or whatever it might be, that things are not going to get better, and they want to alleviate their own personal suffering.
Well, here's the alternative: is someone gets diagnosed with terminal cancer, and they know within 6 months they're not going to be able to think straight. What's the option for them? Well, they're going to purchase a firearm, and in Tennessee, 50% of firearm deaths are through suicide. We far outpace the country in suicide by firearms, and they're going to go out and do something that a family member is going to have to identify the body. That is, potentially the firearm could get picked up by somebody else. There are options right now. They're just not pretty options for people. Mm-hmm. And this gives, again, that dignity in death that they can, choose how they want to end it.
So do you think, obviously anything that you're a Democrat in the state of Tennessee, and, we can do the math, you're going to need Republicans behind you in the House of Representatives. Do you feel like, do you talk to your Republican colleagues on the other side of the aisle and try to overcome some of those types of objections, and how's the reception been? Absolutely.
And it's a false pretense to think that only Republicans are passing Republican bills and Democrats are passing Democrats.
You feel like this kind of crosses party lines?
If you look at the voting record across the legislature, 90% of the bills we all agree on. It's those kind of fringe, hot button, partisan bills. I don't think this should be partisan. And so, talking through the facts and the policy, making sure that I can answer the questions that like the ones that were just asked, that it has all been contemplated in the legislation. In the legislation, we have an example of what the form would look like, what they can fill out, so that there's nothing up to chance. And so, I think we've got a good shot at this. And again, it's a reasonable piece of legislation that I think it's had 2 years to work on.
So I'm getting a lot coming in, as you might expect, but 6211, that's what we identify people who don't give their name by their last four digits. 6211 writes, and this is reflective of a lot of comments. While I don't necessarily agree with assisted suicide, I completely understand the ability to end one's life with dignity and a cessation of pain. And I get that a lot when we have these discussions, that people just they don't agree with it. But I think if you expand your thought process to others that might have slightly different perspectives, I don't necessarily agree with it. But I also recognize that it is the ultimate level of freedom for someone who finds themselves in that situation to alleviate their own personal pain.
And again, why should government decide how long someone should live in pain? The number of emails and calls that I've received in support of this has been pretty profound, and it's story after story after story after story of, for years, my husband, wife, grandfather, grandmother, was trying to take pain pills until the pain got so much that they couldn't control the pain anymore, or they took nerve blockers or whatever they were doing until they stopped working. And to spend the last 6 months of your life in horrible pain in bed because we just decide that's what should happen. I don't understand how that's real freedom.
Is there a concern that this will not be received well amongst physicians? In other words, the Hippocratic Oath comes up, first do no harm. Is that a concern of yours?
So I've talked to multiple physicians about this, and they would get to choose if they want to do this. This is something that they would opt into, and Do you think a doctor wants to remove somebody's arm or, remove a heart from a transplant?
Or take somebody off life support for that.
Or take somebody off life support. Exactly. And so, if we allow for that, for an advance directive, for someone to remove the feeding and breathing tubes, it's effectively the same thing. And it's just, it's stepping up this pain.
Very emotional issue, and we try not to shy away from them. I appreciate your perspective, appreciate you presenting it, and hopefully the audience can learn more about it and let their representatives know where they are on it. Bob, thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.